For more on the legalities of what's being alleged and what's already known to have happened, let's turn to George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley. Jonathan, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
The National Security Act, the Intelligence Authorization Act, and the Federal Torture Act, how many different ways conceivably have the Bush administration and its intelligence arm broken the law in this case?
Well, that's the baffling thing about all of this and the refusal to start a criminal investigation at the Department of Justice. Most prosecutors would love a case like this. There are so many laws that now have a very credible basis for believing that they were violated. You have an army of witnesses that have come forward giving details about the knowing use of torture and about its use for things like the Iraq War justification. If you take a look at the conditions that existed when we appointed a special counsel in the firing of U.S. attorneys, this dwarfs it by many, many times of magnitude. We have so much more information now. So the refusal to start a criminal investigation is perfectly baffling.
Tell me how I can get the law applied to what I do for a living that is applied to the CIA in terms of briefing. It gives you a briefing, you can't take notes. It can take notes, you can't see the notes. If the notes are false representations, well, sorry, they're not false representations because that's the way we have them in the notes. That's a heck of a system.
Well, I think that what the public is really seeing here is what many of us have been saying for years. The oversight system in Washington has been a colossal joke for decades. The intelligence committees in the Senate and the House are viewed as captured, to use a common term, by the agencies that they regulate. And there's very little oversight. There's very little effort of these members, including, I think, Nancy Pelosi, to fully fulfill their obligations. And on the other side, these agencies are used to not giving much information, but more importantly, these members often don't want the information. I don't think Nancy Pelosi wanted to have a fight with the Bush administration over the treatment of detainees. And so this is a circumstance where everyone looks bad, which is why this commission idea is so troubling. You're going to give the same people the job of investigating themselves. Remember, the first substantive thing that the 9/11 Commission did after these people selected those commissioners was to say that they would not blame any individuals. Right. That's what a commission in Washington does.
What was that movie? The Parallax View, that opens and closes with the same commission investigating the first assassination and the assassination that followed the second assassination, and they read exactly the same statement, and it's perfectly true.
That's right.
Mr. Panetta said something that is absolutely fascinating. After saying, oh, no, we have records showing that we briefed Nancy Pelosi and everybody else correctly, he said ultimately it is up to Congress to evaluate all the evidence and reach its own conclusions about what happened. But if they lied either in the briefing or in the account of the briefing or the notes of the briefing, how could you ever prove that?
Well, I do think that is the operative point. That I think that Nancy Pelosi is legitimately subject to criticism, as are the other Democrats like Jane Harman and others. She basically has said that her job was to be notified, as if that's it. The whole idea of notification is to act. And whatever she was told, she admits that she was at least told in the future tense that they were thinking about using an act of torture. If she had simply gone and Googled waterboarding, she would have come up with 200 sites saying that's well-documented torture. But at the end of the day, this is not nearly as important as the fact that Speaker Pelosi and others have yet to call on the president to start a criminal investigation. That's the main question here. Congress can only harm any future prosecution by giving immunity, by leaking evidence. What we need is for an independent and respected prosecutor to look at this and take it where the law may follow. I would think that Dick Cheney would want that vindication. Everyone's entitled to a presumption of innocence. Let's leave it in someone who's neutral and going to apply the law.
Let me double back finally while we have you to torture and waterboarding Khalid Sheikh Mohammed about 9/11 and ties between Iraq and al-Qaeda, which is part of the story today. We've talked before about how the claim that torture works is irrelevant to the crime, both domestically and international. Is torture deliberately designed to elicit false information any worse legally than any other kind of torture?
That's what I think is the most troubling of this debate. And Democrats and Republicans and a lot of reporters are participating in this. And people around the world are totally nonplussed by the fact that we somehow believe that it's relevant whether our torture produced good results. That's not the point. It's a crime. Otherwise, you would say the sheriffs could beat suspects as long as they got some evidence from it. It's a crime crime, and the people who did such an act are criminals.
Jonathan Turley of George Washington University, thank you, sir. Have a good weekend. And off topic, thank you for your note, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith.